2005, when local police in Palm Beach, Florida, began a probe into Epstein, investigating reports of abusing victims as young as 14. The local case led to Epstein's indictment for a single count of soliciting prostitution in 2006, not the more serious alleged conduct. In fact, the lead detective in the Palm Beach office referred the case to the FBI to look at the more serious crimes, and those federal investigators began probing allegations. In 2008, Epstein reached a deal with the Bush administration's federal prosecutors to take that local Florida conviction for soliciting prostitution with an adult and a minor. Epstein got a lenient, short prison sentence and an unusual agreement that the Bush DOJ would not prosecute Epstein further, or 4 of his co-conspirators, or any others. Bush DOJ prosecutors also agreed to keep the deal secret and not inform Epstein's victims about it. A judge later found the Bush DOJ secrecy deal was illegal, violating those victims' rights. So the facts show from the start, Epstein got this unusual protection from the government, in this period, a Republican administration, Bush. And Epstein was a rich, powerful figure. He had ties to people in business and politics. He hired a Republican-connected lawyer, former independent counsel Ken Starr, and served just 1 year in that deal. Now, another 9 years went by, and then the Miami Herald reported an Epstein expose on the allegations of his conduct and that Bush-era prosecutor who cut the sweetheart deal. That investigative report gained traction, partly because of a tie to Trump, who promoted the very prosecutor, Alex Acosta, to a serial sex abuser, the deal of a lifetime. And that public pressure from the Herald drove a new federal probe. Internal DOJ reviews would show Acosta had poor judgment in the case, and that the blanket immunity offers for Epstein and others were just indefensible, leading to a fairly swift federal indictment of Epstein on far more serious sex trafficking charges. And the pressure drove the original prosecutor Trump had promoted, Acosta, to resign around this time. And in a key decision, a judge denied Epstein bail, forcing him to be incarcerated before any trial. It was just over a month later, August 2019, when Epstein was found dead in his cell. The situation was suspicious. Officials there broke several protocols. Epstein was a high-profile detainee. He'd been placed on suicide watch, which was then quickly lifted. Guards failed to do required inspections the very night of his death. And a lot of questions were hanging over all of this. So let's go even further ahead, all the way up to 2019 and what happened after that. Because key videos went missing. Trump Attorney General Barr even admitting the prison made mistakes then, but claiming that he personally reviewed prison video which showed no one entering the cell. And with Epstein dead, prosecutors turned to a co-conspirator who might have benefited from that original Florida case being shut down, what I told you about. They went ahead and indicted Maxwell for helping Epstein's sex trafficking, a case brought by a career prosecutor, Maureen Comey, daughter of former FBI Director Comey. And her work continued on when the Biden administration took over. She won Maxwell's conviction and this 20-year prison sentence. Then, during the 2024 campaign, the questions and theories about Epstein's crimes and special treatment were heating up on the right. It was a problem for Trump to answer questions or have transparency about whatever happened in that prison cell. So Trump tried to go on offense, vowing to declassify and release Epstein's files. And his attorney general took over that message and advanced it in office, now infamously claiming that she had the client list on her desk, which she later contradicted because shortly after, the DOJ released an alternate video from the prison. But the key video that shows Epstein's cell door is either lost or hidden. It's never been released. And Bondi released the now infamous memo that said they wouldn't provide any other Epstein documents. So Bondi went from saying there was a client list to there wasn't. She was lying then or lying now. The DOJ memo then said there was no other Epstein info that was going to be released, which ignited that firestorm of criticism we all lived through. And given the broken vows, that couldn't hold. Trump soon contradicted his own DOJ's memo and saying he would try to get grand jury material released, but those are limited transcripts. A lot of the big Epstein information is in the Trump DOJ. They could release it anytime. One judge has denied this. And as the Trump administration's contradicting claims drew more heat on its secrecy, the DOJ then sent this former Trump criminal defense attorney to interview Maxwell in prison and then transferred her to a better prison, an apparent reward for the one person doing any time for Epstein's indicted federal crimes. Your reaction to this reporting about the apparent unusual or special treatment for Maxwell?
Well, it's offensive to the survivors. You know, the survivors are at the center of this, and they often get forgotten. They were in the front of the steps of the Capitol. They talked about recruit other junior high girls knowing that they would get abused by Maxwell and Epstein. And they found it so outrageous that there was any talk of giving Maxwell lenient treatment given what she had done to those women. And so I just, on an emotional level, am outraged by this. And I don't understand how this has become a partisan issue. You have survivors who are saying that they want justice.
The administration doesn't seem to care about the substance, the ethics, as you put it, or a term they throw around a lot in Washington, the quote optics, because as we reported, they rushed to respond to that unusual interview with this special treatment transfer. Can the Congress do anything about that?
We absolutely can. And the first thing we need to do is to have the full release of the Epstein files. And here's the state of play on that. We have 217 signatures. We need one more signature to force a vote in the House of Representatives. It's an open secret that if we get that vote in the House of Representatives, you will have 50, 60 more Republicans defect because they're not going to vote against the release of the files.
What do they call it? They call that log rolling or something? Where in the Congress, it's like everyone's ducking it, and then if it happens, everyone jumps on it.
Exactly. You know the terminology. But we've got Adelita Grajova, who a few weeks ago wins her election in Arizona. It's not close, 70-30. It's a blowout election. And for the past 2.5 weeks, since September 23rd, the Congress has literally been shut down. We didn't come back to vote on the pay for troops, which is ending on a Wednesday, but the president had to rearrange money at the DOD just to pay the troops. Why are we shut down during the Congress? For one simple reason: Mike Johnson knows that the day we have votes, Adelita Grajova gets sworn in, and then we have a 218 signature, and we get the vote in the Epstein files. So we're going to get this done.
Just to slow you down, you're saying once that's sworn in and you're back in regular order, presumably post shutdown, then you all but have the votes.
Once we have votes, whether it's during the shutdown or after the shutdown, that day, and we will have the votes on the files. But they want what they're hoping, and they've hoped this time and again when they shut down the Congress during the recesses. They're hoping if they just delay this, maybe this issue goes away.
Yeah. And you said, I said log rolling, you said 7 legislative days, a type of day. So we both get one strike on jargon, sir. Let me turn your attention to this CBS report, which was pretty astounding from an investigative view. No indication that when the Trump BOP and DOJ went in there, when Epstein was first found dead, that they ran fingerprints or DNA tests inside the cell. So that's the evidence response team. They didn't, according to the documents reviewed by CBS, ever run those tests. Is that suspicious? And when we look at this misconduct, I want to be very clear with viewers, there could be mistakes and failures by the then Trump Bureau of Prisons that don't involve Epstein being killed. That's one of the questions under investigation, but could have just involved other failures that they didn't have a lot of interest in getting into. So they didn't really do a thorough probe. That's the implication of CBS. At the same time, as you know, the DOJ then was under Democratic control for 4 years. The Inspector General report, as I understand it, was ultimately finished under the Biden era. And it doesn't seem, from what we can tell, that either party running the DOJ at the time has been very thorough about this, been, shall I say, interested in whether it ultimately found errors of any kind by the government, which is why we don't usually trust the government to investigate itself. Your response on that, and specifically on the Biden DOJ part?
Well, there are obviously questions, and I don't think anyone is saying that DOJ under Biden, under Trump, or frankly, for decades since these women haven't had justice, has done a good job. That's why people are saying, let's have the release of the files. I mean, the survivors who I've gotten to know now personally have been denied justice from the first time that Jeffrey Epstein got a slap on the wrist plea deal. And they've not been consulted by Justice Department lawyers. They are asking for these files to be released.
And why is that as compared to other important crimes that get prosecuted? Do you have a core answer of why?
The Jeffrey Epstein case is one of the most disturbing and revealing scandals in modern American history. It exposes how money, power, and influence can bend the justice system. In 2005, police in Palm Beach, Florida, began investigating Epstein for sexually abusing underage girls. The FBI got involved, but in 2008, he received an unbelievably light deal from federal prosecutors during the Bush administration. This sweetheart deal gave him just 13 months in jail and promised not to prosecute his co-conspirators. Even worse, it was kept secret from the victims, which a judge later ruled illegal. Epstein's legal team included powerful lawyers and political insiders, proving his influence reached deep into the system. For nearly a decade after that, nothing happened. Then in 2018, the Miami Herald exposed the full story. Public outrage forced federal prosecutors to reopen the case. In 2019, Epstein was finally arrested on serious sex trafficking charges. But before he could face trial, he was found dead in his jail cell. Officially ruled a suicide, his death was surrounded by suspicious circumstances: broken cameras, missing footage, guards who failed to check on him, and no DNA or fingerprint tests done in the cell. These failures were not small mistakes. They raised serious questions about whether the system protected him again. The government under both Trump and Biden avoided full transparency. The key Epstein files and the so-called client list have never been released. Ghislaine Maxwell, Epstein's partner in crime, was convicted and sentenced to 20 years, but she remains the only person punished in a massive sex trafficking operation that clearly involved others. Meanwhile, political leaders keep delaying a congressional vote that could force the release of the files. This case is not about left or right. It is about how powerful people escape accountability. Epstein had ties to billionaires, celebrities, and politicians from both parties.